Good evening.
Hi.
Sorry, a bit late. Just got back from Mincha Marv.
What? It's 8. Sorry.
Okay. Hold on a second. Let's find a place here. Okay. So I believe the last time we spoke about the proof of Emunah from the fact that the what was the last time we spoke about did we speak about the animals? We spoke about it.
No, the reason why what's it called? The reason of like Har Sinai, whatever.
We have 600,000 people who came and told us that basically it's true. Okay, so that was right. So that was the idea of Har Sinai being a Masorah, which we have, which is so based on such a firm basis that it's impossible to deny, and all other religions, no other religion having this concept of Hashem coming and revealing Himself to the entire nation. And we said that also that the all other religions are based on one person coming and persuading everybody that he or she is obviously a tremendous leader and powerful person, and that may well be, but that is all based on that person's coming and communicating in the name of whatever they're telling us to worship, as opposed for Judaism, where we say that all of us had a connection with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and Hashem spoke to all of us at Har Sinai. And that's how we know Hashem came down to us, and Hashem wanted us to receive the Torah, and that's how we know also that Moshe Rabbeinu is a prophet, not because Moshe told us he was sent by Hashem, but Hashem told us that he's sending us Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, all that we mentioned last time. So that was the fifth way of explaining Emunah. The sixth way, he says, is that it is philosophical, and philosophical means kind of like using logic to explain it. And I'm going to skip to where he at first he speaks about why philosophy is very complicated and why a lot of the Rishonim were against using philosophy to prove Emunah in Hashem, because people don't really fully understand it and people can be led astray by it. But then he goes on, he gives a very simple explanation, philosophical explanation, and I know very, but simple enough. So we're going to start from here. All of our grasp of this current world is by physical things. In other words, I can't see spiritual things. Now, unless I have nevuah, I can't see spiritual things. I can't see angels. I can't see things which take place in other worlds besides ours. I can only see physical things. And And that's true about all the senses. The senses, I hear things that take place in this world. I don't hear supernatural things. I feel things that take place in this world. I taste and smell things that take place in this world. I can't get to things beyond nature in this world. The saying we feel them with our fingers. We measure them by tools which we use with our hands. We describe the various different objects by their physical characteristics. Since all were born in this limited world, which is under the control of time and of matter. We don't recognize directly things which are not material. Things which are not under the limitations of time, and changing over time. Things which don't happen just as time goes by, but things which are always true in all times and all places. They're not occasional, they're not coincidental, they're intrinsically true. And he's going to explain what that means. He means that in the next paragraph. But there's a very fascinating book written in the 19th century by not a Jewish person, but called Flatland. I don't know if I ever told you about Flatland. Flatland is a book about, it's a mathematical book, but it also happens to be a book about Emunah, because it's a book about a flatland is a place where everything exists in 2 dimensions. 2 dimensions means nothing has any height. Everything has only length and width. And all the inhabitants of flatland live in 2 dimensions. So if they and then all of a sudden a 3-dimensional being comes into flatland. And the flatlanders don't know what to do with this, because a 3-dimensional being is something which they can't comprehend because they can only see 2 dimensions. So this being, in essence, if you look at from a flat surface at something 3-dimensional, so it's going to go up and down, and you're never going to see the whole thing at once. You're going to be able to see what's directly opposite your eyes, and then it's going to disappear and reappear, and it's constantly going to be something which is beyond your capacity to grasp. And the book is about all about how this 2-dimensional person, so to speak, this gets into communication with this 3-dimensional person, and how he first doesn't believe in him, then he does believe in him, how it gets proved to him, and the way it gets proved to him basically is that somehow miraculously the 2-dimensional figure is removed from his 2 dimensions, put on his side, and now he can perceive 3 dimensions, which of course is something which requires a miracle in the flatland to happen. So the mashal there, besides the mathematics involved, the mashal is that we only exist in a 3-dimensional world. We don't see the 4th dimension, meaning we don't see spiritual things. We don't see the world of malachim. We don't see the world of ruchnius. We don't see olam haba. We don't see things which are beyond our 3 dimensions, right? In order to see that, one would have to be uplifted outside this world and have a special prophecy in order to experience that. So the story there's a book in the book. The other people condemn him as a heretic, and they made a couple of movies out of that also. And obviously, the rest of the people in Flatland, they don't believe that it could possibly be a 3rd dimension, right? So too for us, how do we believe that there's a 4th dimension? You got the issue. So in the book also, the author goes through what in the 1-dimensional world would be like, where there's no width, only length. Fascinating book, very very mathematical, like I said. But the point is that there is a way in which we can access even ourselves a dimension beyond the one in which we exist, and that's what he says in the next paragraph. Actually, when we use logic, we'll know that there are things which are not material. We know that there are concepts of honesty, being straight, of tzedek, of justice, of kavod, of honor. These are not things which exist, right? I can't point at this and say this is honor, this is justice, this is honesty. They're concepts. They're not things. So they don't exist outside my mind and your mind. They exist in our mind. They don't exist in reality. Rabbi Kaplan says in one of his books, a good way to think of God, although it's not only a muscle, right? It's not precise in any way, shape, or form. is think about 2 plus 2 equals 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4 is the truth, but doesn't exist in space. At the same time, it doesn't exist in space, it exists everywhere in the universe, right? Wherever you go, 2 plus 2 equals 4. So in essence, 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a concept. And because it's a concept, it's not limited by time and space. It's true everywhere, but it's also nowhere. It doesn't exist in space, right? It exists in the world of concepts. So that's a good mashal for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Because Hashem exists in the world of concepts, he's absolute truth. It's like 2 plus 2 equals 4 is true. He's absolute truth. He's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You see that parallel? It's pretty deep, right? So this is the same principle we have here with Yosher, etc. Covered. All these things don't exist in place. They're concepts, but they're true everywhere, right? So they're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. As I said early, early in the year, I said the song "Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere" is heretical. It's not because the reason why Hashem is not everywhere, Hashem is nowhere. But that which is nowhere doesn't exist, and where is true everywhere you go. Okay, that clear? Someone? No?
You're saying it should say Hashem is true, Hashem is true, Hashem is true everywhere.
Hashem is not here. Hashem is not there. Hashem is truly nowhere. Hashem is
nowhere. Wait, what does that
mean?
Hashem is nowhere.
It doesn't exist in where. Just like honor doesn't exist in
where. Because you're saying you're saying because they teach little kids that Hashem is out.
Hashem is here. Hashem is there. Right? It means that Hashem is all over the place, but he's not. Hashem doesn't. It's just like 2 plus 2 equals 4. It doesn't exist in place, right?
He needs to be something to be able to grant things.
What?
He needs to be at least something spiritual in order to grant things.
Something spiritual can't grab things.
Grant.
Oh, yes. Right. It's not 100% accurate, of course, to say Hashem is a concept because he's much more than that. You're right. But he doesn't have, he's not spatial, right? Hashem is what we said.
But he's spiritually spatial, right?
No, spirituality is not spatial.
He's a spiritual being, like a malach.
But no, a malach exists also in either time or space. Hashem exists outside of time and space, right? A malach might not exist in space, but exists in time. Hashem doesn't exist in time.
Malachim are physical?
What?
Malachim are physical?
They're not physical. They're spiritual. They can take physical form, but they're not that just like the same thing like in your neshama. Your neshama is not physical, right? Your neshama is happens.
But your neshama, but Hashem is something. He's just invisible, right?
No. Hashem is nowhere. Hashem is no thing. Hashem is nobody, right? He's not.
Right. I know he has no body, but he's still there.
There is the wrong term. There means he's there and not there, right? Or
so what's the right term?
What?
Well, he's there everywhere.
I mean, the right term is Hashem has a relationship with us.
You can't have a relationship with somebody if you're not a spiritual being at the very least.
Why? Can't have a spiritual relationship.
Because if you're not a spiritual being and you're not a physical being, you're nothing.
Can you have a spiritual being? Do you have a spiritual relationship with other people?
Do I have a spirit? No.
No?
Emotional.
If you any talk
relationship with other people.
Well, if you feel close to other people, you have a spiritual relationship with them, right?
I guess.
You feel close to your sister, right? You have to be in the same room to feel close to your sister.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Well, no. Sorry, I thought you said something else.
Yeah, only if you want to be physically close, right? But if you want to feel, you can feel closeness even if you're not physically close, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, it happens to be that we can't transmit our thoughts through the air, but imagine we could, right? So then we could also not just have a closeness without being in the same room, but we could have a relationship without being in the same room, right?
Right.
Now we can't, once upon a time, people couldn't even grasp that. But now with telephone, it's very easy to grasp that, right? I don't even have to be in the same room. I can have a relationship with somebody, even though they're somewhere else, right? So my relationship doesn't have to do with space. It has to do with connection.
But it's still something. Your relationship is one brain communicating with another. So
No,
Hashem has to be something in order to
it's one neshama connected to communicate with the other. Can you
what?
communicate? Can you communicate after you're dead? Yes,
No.
of course you can.
Oh, from dreams.
What? No, with two neshamas which are dead in all of my book, can they communicate with each other?
Yeah,
So obviously you don't
I
need a
guess
brain
I
in order
don't
to
know.
communicate. Yeah, you don't need a brain in order to communicate
Because it's something else up there. I don't know.
because it's your neshama.
Right, but I'm saying there is something. There's a neshama, but
Not a
Hashem.
neshama is not a thing. A neshama is
Okay.
more close to a concept than to a thing, right? It's not
So you're
exactly
saying,
what?
like any connection that you have with some like a person on earth, that's not emotional, that's spiritual.
No, emotion is also a spirit.
Uh,
Emotion is
uh,
a spiritual thing, right? You can't if you don't have any spirit, you can't have robot has no emotions. You have to have a
True.
spirit in order to have emotions. It's not that you don't have to have a human neshama. Animals can also have emotions. Maybe even plants can have emotions, but there has to be something spiritual. Otherwise, you can't have an emotion, right?
Like you're saying animals have nefesh and we have
Right,
Hashem.
right, exactly.
But what does Hashem have that's physical that can connect to us?
Nothing. It's all spiritual.
Exactly. So he is something.
Why do you keep using the word thing?
Because there's no other word in the dictionary.
No, you could say there is. And he's an entity, a being, an existence. There are many words. The word
so
thing
he is a being. He's there. He is a being. He's not just something that
being means he
we
bees.
pretend we're talking to.
Right? Being means he bees.
If he
right?
understands, he has to be a being, right?
What?
If he understands,
Right,
he
but
has to be a being.
the word being just means to be. It doesn't really explain anything, right? Being
Right.
means,
So he is. He is.
no, so you're not
and
explaining
something
anything.
that is.
By saying he's a being, you're not really explaining anything. You're just using a term which you're used to using. Right? It's a term which you've been used your whole life. You're used to it. You're familiar with it, so it makes you feel better. But the word being itself, it's very hard to define because the being just means something is.
Being is something. Being means something. It means something
Keep saying
that's
that
there.
being does not mean something.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
It means something alive.
No. It means
What does it
something which
mean?
is, something which bees.
Exactly. So he is.
He is, that's true.
And
But
nothing can be
not,
unless they are there.
You can say Hashem is. You don't have to say Hashem is a thing. You can say Hashem is. Then stop.
Okay.
What is he? He's Hashem. Right? Even call Hashem a he is wrong, right? Hashem is not a he, Hashem is not a she, Hashem exists beyond those concepts. You just use the word he because it's convenient for us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get further. So these concepts in Bali Erech Rabbi Yosser, they have much more value and mashpiyim ba'otzma chazaka Yosser and influence us much more mikol inyane hachomer than all material things. In other words, I care about my honor much more than I care about physical things, right? That's why if you insult me, it bothers me much more than if you take something away from me physically, because these concepts, which exist only in my mind or in my neshama, actually much more precious to me than any material thing I have. Usually, the reason why I like material things is because it gives me a sense of honor. I feel I'm significant if I possess material things. It's not a good way to feel significant, but that's how most people feel significant. But my significance, which is what we say in English, intangible. It's not something I can touch. It's really much more important to me than anything I actually possess, right? If you get into a fight with your sibling because they took something away from you, it doesn't really bother you that they took something away from you. They took away your doll or your toy or so whatever it is. It's because they made you feel insignificant. right? They robbed you of your dignity. So that's really what is at work. Now, if we were very big tzaddikim, we wouldn't care that people robbed us of our dolls or of our toys, because it really doesn't detract from our significance, right? We're no less significant just because we don't have material object. But we're not tzaddikim. So therefore, we feel that if somebody takes something away from us, it takes away our significance, right? You with me on this? So, but these are it says we must on the other hand, divrei chomer, material things, hinam chofim, they pass away, bovrim, and they go away from us. They're not even stable in the long term. Rambam Herrick said Emunah Nevuchim. Rambam spends a long time speaking about this. Emunah Nevuchim, obviously that's nice, but not relevant to us today. Davar baruch, it's clear. She'ena davar yotzeres atzmo. Nothing can create itself. And it can't be that things created themselves. For 3 reasons. A, how would you have a will to create yourself? In other words, I want to create something. I have a will to create something. That's why I created. If I didn't exist, I wouldn't have a will to create myself, right? I'm not there to have that will to create myself. So therefore, that's one reason. I can't create myself. How can I create myself? If I don't exist, now I don't have a will to create myself. I don't have the tools to create myself. Right? I don't exist. Where are my tools? Gimel, what kind of power do I have to take something which doesn't exist and bring it into existence? So there's got to be in creation some first cause, which itself didn't have a first cause. It itself was not caused by anything else. Chazal and Pirkei Avos say that you need a pliers. You know what a pliers is? You know what pliers are? It's a tool, like a wrench, right? You need a pliers to make another pliers. So who made the first pliers? Right? You need, in order to make a pliers, you have to have a pliers. So it says Hashem made the first pliers. Hashem made the first pliers, Ben Hashmashos and Erev Shabbos. So whatever the mashal means, the point is that things in this world need something else to create them. So if you get back to the beginning, and pliers is an example where you need a pliers to make a pliers, who made the first pliers? So it must be that Hashem made the first pliers. Hashem is the first cause, and the first cause of everything. That means that everything in this world is cause and effect, cause and effect. I do something, create something, then that leads to another thing, and that leads to another thing, and that leads to another thing. If I follow everything back to its beginning, I'll get to the first cause of everything. That first cause can't exist in time, because if it exists in time, there has to be something which came before it and which caused it. So it's got to be something which doesn't exist in time and also doesn't exist in space, because otherwise, what occupied that space beforehand? So we have to have something, and this philosophical, obviously, it requires a lot of thought to understand this. There's got to be a first cause which is beyond time and beyond space, which created time and space. And that entity, that first cause, is Hashem. That's the philosophical proof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there has to be a first cause. Now, scientists, a lot of times, they say, well, the Big Bang is where everything started. But that just leads to the question, what brought about the Big Bang? And they have no answer for that. Because, what was there before the Big Bang? How did the Big Bang possibly happen? If there was nothing, how did all of a sudden become something? It's a tremendous problem in science. They don't have a good answer for it. Keep trying to give answers other than Hashem, but it doesn't really work. So the only real good answer is that to say that there is something which exists outside of time and space, and that created time and space. That's how you philosophically prove that there's a God, by trying to go back and finding a first cause. That first cause is Hashem. Okay, that's what he says here. The fact that we don't see him with our senses, doesn't contradict his existence. Because logically, it must be that there is such an entity. Because we know, since we know, he must be the perfect entity of all perfections. That which we see and recognize from his activities, is this amazing system of nature, which is going on constantly from the beginning of humanity, even before that. It has no interruption. He can't be this first entity from something material, which gets destroyed over time, or changes every moment. It must be something which is detached from all reality, something beyond all reality, like that the three-dimensional being in the land of two dimensions. Hashem has to exist in a different dimension than we do, because he has to create our dimension. So that which the eye does not see him, doesn't see that entity, but and the ear does not hear that entity. That's true, but it has to be that way because Hashem has to exist outside of these things he created. It makes very much logical sense. And we can't see it because or grasp it because, again, without prophecy, how can something which exists in the material world perceive something which does exist beyond the material world? But it's compelling logic. The idea which compels us to know that he must exist. We see what he made. It's like you see a fingerprint on some surface. You know somebody was here. And left his sign here. So too from the physical world, which is constantly changing. If Shalimo, we can learn that there's a creator who wasn't physical, which doesn't change, and he is complete perfection. So here's a good question. How you know there's only one first cause and not two first causes? In other words, maybe there are two gods who created the world. How you know there's only one? The answer is Bruchnius Einam Shus Lavdil Ben Shnayim Haidesh Shatar Eza Shinui Gashmi. That's a fascinating idea, and it's philosophical, so it's deep, and people don't necessarily fully understand it. But how do I define something spiritual as being different from something else as spiritual? It has to have different characteristics. The Rabbi Kaplan, one of his books, he says, Malachim are associated with planets or different objects in the universe. Says, why do you have to identify with planets? So he says, and this is one explanation, I shouldn't say this is the only explanation. He says, something which exists in spirituality cannot be defined as different than something else unless it has some different characteristics, some different quality. Otherwise, it's exactly the same thing. What defines something as different in spirituality, if it had one thing as the exact same characteristics as the other thing, it's the exact same thing. In space, that's not true. In space, I operate in this space, you operate in that space, and perhaps we're identical in everything else, but the very fact that I'm in this space and you're in that space means that we're not the same thing. But if you take away space and two things are identical in their spirituality, there's no difference between the two of them. So therefore he says one of the ways in which malachim are differentiated is not by their difference in spirituality, although that's another way they can differentiate it, by their difference in what physical object they're associated with. And that's how you differentiate them, because if this malach is associated with Venus and this malach is associated with Mars, so malachim are identical for other purposes. The very fact that I'm attached to Mars and you're attached to Venus, that makes us different from each other. So this is the idea which he says that normally the way we differentiate between two things is there's some physical difference. You have to define what the difference is between the two of them. And how they are by angels. You have to find the difference between them in how they are unique. But that which created everything, the entire system, and continues to exist below atzira lo takalos without any stoppage, without any flaws. Who b'siyach shleimus is perfect. How can be more than one perfection? Whereas by definition, something which is perfect, beyond all perfection, can only be one, can't be two. There couldn't be two things which are perfect beyond perfection, because then they're the same thing. If they were physical, you could have theoretically two things which are perfect, which are different. But something which is physical is not perfect by definition, because physical stuff is imperfect. It changes over time. It deteriorates over time. It's something which is completely spiritual, and it's completely perfect. So by definition, it's only one. It can't be two, because you wouldn't be
How
able
do you
to
know
edit
that it's
everything.
perfect though?
What?
How do
Because
you know?
it has to be
How
something
do
which
you?
has to be something, an entity, not a thing. I used the word thing by mistake. Has to be an entity which was able to create everything which exists. So it means that it is perfect beyond all possible perfection, because everything which exists is just something which is a detail of it. So now you can't
Wait.
have two things which have the same perfection beyond all perfection, because then they're both going to be identical. Both identical. There's no difference between the two. No difference between the two. There must be the same thing, the same entity.
Well, it's like DNA. No, I don't like understand it. If it's okay, two things. One is that to answer that question is you said that to tell the difference between, let's say, malachim is because they don't have space, they'll be the exact same thing. Well, they're still two beings. They're still two entities, but they could be identical. Two identical entities.
Only
No?
if they're associated with something physical. Yeah.
But
But
Hashem is
But
associated
Hashem's
with
not associated
everything
with
that's
any physical. Hashem is beyond physical. He created the physical. He's not associated with the physical. It's only if I create a malach
He's
and I say,
associated
okay,
with it because he
you
made
malach, you're associated. I create a malach and say, you malach, you're Venus, and you malach, you're Mars. So then I created the malachim and associated them with something physical. Hashem wasn't associated anything physical until
But they're still identical. You just made them have different names.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I still can differentiate them that way. Now, the truth is, it's very simple. You're right. That would be not a great difference. And there are many malachim have different qualities. I'm talking about hypothetically. Theoretically, if they had no different qualities, the only way to distinguish between the two would be if they actually had some association with something physical. Because in the world of spirituality, things which are identical are the same thing.
You could say the same thing with identical twins because scientists still don't know the difference.
Right. Identical twins, also, their differentiation is only because they're two separate bodies. Otherwise, if they didn't have two separate bodies, they'd be the same thing.
Well, apparently there is something. If
That's
you're
if you one side.
if Hashem is able to associate them with something, there apparently are something. If they're able to say you are you and you are you, then there wouldn't be any.
Because the
there
truth
would only
is,
just
the
be
truth
one
is
spiritual body.
You're right. The truth is that they're two neshamos. If from our perspective, the reason why identical twins are not the same person is because they have two different neshamos. But if you didn't believe in a neshama, so the only differentiation between the two would be the fact that they're in different bodies. If two people had this exact same DNA, then you would not be able to differentiate between the two of them, except for the fact that they're in two different bodies. So it's the bodies which differentiate the two of them, because otherwise they'd be identical. Again, for us as Jews, that's not true, because we believe there's a neshama, and the neshamas are different neshamas. I don't know if that makes sense.
That part does.
Okay.
But then also, my other question, I'll put that aside for a second. My other question is, you said we know Hashem is perfect. How do we know he's perfect? Just because he created the world, that doesn't mean that he's perfect necessarily. It just means he was the only option we had, so he did it.
You're right, but he has to be something which is beyond everything in this world. Right? That's how we're defining perfection for our purposes. Something which includes everything in this world and goes beyond it.
So you're saying that
means he has to go be 1 second. So it means he has to be beyond time and space, because time and space are things which are created in this world.
Right. So he has to be beyond time and space. So then how do we know that everything he's doing is right if we don't know that he's perfect by definition, that he's doing everything correctly? Because if we don't, you said you're right, we don't know if that he's perfect. So if we don't know he's perfect, how do we know that he's perfect? Because everybody says whatever Hashem does is for the good, whatever Hashem does is correct, whatever. So how do we know he's perfect if it doesn't say anywhere that he's perfect? If he was the only thing.
Yeah, they're two separate things. That Hashem is perfect is one thing. Hashem is good is another thing. You're right. Being perfect doesn't necessarily mean something is good. The fact that Hashem is good is a separate thing from believing that he's perfect. Right? Something can be perfect and not necessarily be good.
Doesn't perfect mean exactly right? And
no, perfect means that they have all power possible. That's what perfect means in this sense.
Is that the Hebrew definition of perfect?
Sholem, yeah. Sholem. Complete. Sholem and Tov are not the same word.
Okay.
That Hashem is good, that he's Tov, is a separate thing. And that we know because he wants us to be good.
So wait, perfect is that he
Kol Yachol. You can do anything.
Okay.
Okay? And besides that, he's Tov.
Okay.
So they're two separate things. Right. You can have something which is hypothetically something which is perfect and perfectly evil. But that's not, Hashem is good because he gave us a drive to be good. And I don't know if we mentioned this, but every human being wants to be good. There's no human being who wants to be bad. The thing is, everybody has a different definition of what good means. In other words, you can be a criminal, and good you define as what's good for me, and good for my family, right? But there's every person has a drive to be good. When you say a person likes being bad, it's not what they don't really mean. A person likes being bad. It means a person's definition of good is warped. But everybody really wants to be good in some way, shape, or form. Okay, that's the mentally diseased. That's something else. So the okay, so let's try and finish this paragraph here. So it says it continues the story, which in the middle of. That we can't talk about physical differences in this world, which is not physical. So how we recognize that something is more than one. In this case, you can't suggest that one is more sholem than the other. So then you, by definition, he's not perfect. But the whole premise of the question is maybe you have two things which are perfect. Also, in the world of internal recognition, we start from 0 point. We don't know anything exists, and then we have to figure out what really does exist. By logical argument, we prove there is something which exists, echad, one of them, and we shouldn't assume without any proof that there's more than one. Unless there's some logical reason. In other words, it's not logical unless you have some compelling reason. It's not logic to assume that there's more than one first cause. But I'd say the Rambam says, he puts it very, very starkly. He says that there's only one nimtza, one thing which truly exists in the world. That's Hashem. What does that mean? It means everything. Hashem is the only true existence because his existence is the one existence which is always true and always real, and everything else, which we call reality, is actually something which Hashem created. So there has to be one entity, and it can't. And there's no reason for there to be two, and it doesn't make sense that there are two. That's what he's saying. Why would you suggest that there are two? There's no reason to suggest it. It doesn't make any sense. So unless you had some proof that there are two, by definition, you'd say there's one first cause. Because around. Otherwise, you're just saying, okay, who cares? Maybe there's more than one, but then you can suggest anything and be no end to that. Okay, but we'll have less than a minute left, so I think we'll have to stop here. There are other proofs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu which we didn't get to. Maybe we'll get to them next summer. Have a great year, girls. Enjoy your schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ask questions. Be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait, are we doing it?
During the year?
No, you have gym, I heard, on Sundays.
Right, yeah. So, okay.
Be in touch. If you have a time you want to learn, let me know. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Bye bye.